All right, so we're going to talk about advanced billing and estimates. As we mentioned, this is designed for somebody who's already familiar with the invoicing software and the estimate software for quotations in Apptivo. We're going to help you talk about the features that you might not know about and also how to configure some of the more advanced flows. So first, let's go through the quick agenda for what we're going to be covering in this presentation. We're going to start off and just look at the overall invoicing flows. So this is where we're going to start off as far as basics are concerned is, well, how do these estimates and invoices actually fit into the end-to-end lead-to-cash process that you're running inside of your business? And then we're going to focus in on kind of some of the setup-related items. So you might have already done a few of these in your company, like configuring tax codes, but we're going to run through a couple of them, such as configuring a payment gateway, putting together a tax code for a more complex environment, and also setting up payment terms, email messages. And then we'll work and talk about the custom fields, the extra data that you can put in, and then how that might be displayed inside of your PDF templates. Then we'll move into a couple of the cool little features in the invoices that you might not have known about. So we have these great late payment reminders, and we also have a system that you can apply credits to your future invoices for every customer. And then at the end, we'll talk about a couple of the little bit more unique billing flows, which is a recurring invoice or recurring billing. We'll explain the difference between those two. And then we'll talk about tracking down payments and how you might go about that using some of the other apps and a couple options that you have available. All right, so the first step, talking about the available billing flows. One quick little note is everything is completely flexible in the way that it works. You can start from a sale, which is a lead or an opportunity. I can go straight from an opportunity right into an invoice and build them right away. I could go to an estimate from there, or my opportunity can even launch like a project or an order or something along those lines. So the idea is that you might do a quote and a bill for one transaction. You might do only one because maybe they reject the estimate. You might just do the invoice if you just go straight to that. Then you also might track the delivery of your service through one of these apps right here. But the idea is we're going to focus in on these two parts right here, the estimate and the invoice, and we're going to talk a little bit about this at the end of like how to handle down payments and other unique situations. We're just going to hop straight into the demo from there. So to kind of recap on what we want to cover is we're just going to surf through all of the configuration. So we're going to check out the settings, I'm going to show you a couple things, and then we're going to talk about the customization. So let's go ahead, let's take a look at our demo Apptivo account, and we're going to start off in the estimates. Now, one quick little note, from a technical aspect, the estimates and the invoices are actually extremely similar to each other. So a lot of the features that we're going to demonstrate in one of them, this knowledge is going to apply equally to both of the different systems. And for this, let's go ahead and let's just hop straight into the settings area. So inside of here, it starts off with the general settings. We have a few different pages. There's actually a couple more options as far as what we can do inside of invoices. At a very basic level, okay, selecting the default lines. I'm not really going to focus on this or the numbering. The multiple currencies is actually a common thing that a lot of people need to enable. What this does is it simply allows you to select which currency each estimate will be in. It doesn't necessarily do the conversion of the values that you type into your product database. You're still going to have to do the conversion manually, type in the values. It just allows you to specify a different currency. So instead of saying USD, I could say GBP. Then these other two, these are actually enabled right out of the box, or sorry, this one's enabled out of the box. Almost every company does want this from my experience, but it allows you to change the price of an item from your product database. Some companies might want to restrict this, so when their employees are generating estimates, they are not allowed to modify those prices that are set up by the administrators. This is an option for you to choose from, though. And then we have our supplier item feature right here. This is actually for another flow. It's called our kit order flow. But what it allows you to do is kind of cost out your estimates. So we do have a whole supply chain suite, allows you to define all the products and how much you source them for. And then when completing an estimate, I can select the supplier for each product that I include, and it will show me how much I'm going to have to pay for that product. So those are some general items. And then you also see there's an area called Notes to Customer on every estimate. This is just a personalized message that you can include. This is one thing, though, that I can edit. When I actually create the estimate, I'm going to be able to choose the notes to the customer for that particular estimate. All right, so next is payment terms. This is pretty straightforward. Almost everybody can get by with the defaults out of the box, but just so you're aware of kind of how this works, let's say if I wanted to create a new payment term, I'm going to give them a 120-day pay period. I can name it whatever I want. So the name doesn't really have any functionality tied to it. And then this is the important field. So I can go ahead and I can put in my payment term there, just mark it as enabled. And then the determination of whether the invoice is overdue or not when you actually get to that stage is going to be driven strictly by this payment term right here. Now for taxes. If you're in California or basically anywhere in the US, it's really simple. We just have this flat tax rate. But when we get to invoices, I'm actually going to demonstrate how you can set up a much more complicated tax code system. So we do have support for the tax codes internationally. But before we move on, I just want to kind of quickly show you the other common features. We got PDF templates in here, which I'm going to demonstrate in invoices in a moment. Message templates is how you control the email template. So when you send an estimate or an invoice off to your customer, I can have a standardized message, and I'm able to insert the various links and such in there. And then our reminder system is really cool. I'm going to tell you about this a little bit later. And it's also custom fields in each app. So now that we looked at estimates, let's switch on over to invoices and finish that out, because you're going to notice that there's quite a few more settings inside of the invoices app. Okay. So in here, I mentioned I was going to demonstrate the taxes. So I'll just go ahead and quickly show you that. So the basic tax codes are right here. But let's say that you're living in Canada, for example, and you have to set up a combined tax code. So what I can do is I can put together a multi-rate tax. And then on this multi-rate tax, what I can actually do is combine two other tax codes together. So in this case, it's actually going to apply these two. It'll stack them together. And we should cover just about any type of tax that you need to implement. So we can mark whether they're flat or stacked together. We can put even more taxes together with this, and we can also choose what details are actually output onto the invoice. So yes, in the example where you have to charge VAT tax and it's legally required for you to show the VAT tax on each line item, we do indeed support that feature. Okay, then for taxes, you'll see that there also is at the line level, and you can set taxes at the header level instead. So if you just charge one tax for the entire invoice, like a VAT tax is really common for that, you can do this. Just saves you a little bit of effort in inputting the invoice. Or the line item is a little bit more granular and potentially is required, depending if you have like some taxable and some non-taxable items on that invoice. Now, export defaults, this is specifically for those of you who are using the QuickBooks export feature in Apptivo. It'll commonly have to be modified just in order to match your special QuickBooks configuration or the version of QuickBooks that you're using. Some of them have slightly different account names, and they need to match up with your previous installation. So just a couple features to help you configure that. And all right, so those are the basic settings. Really, you'll see I've got the same kind of things in here. But now we want to kind of move on to the next stage, which is custom fields and PDF templates. So what is actually displayed to your customer? And for that, let's go ahead and let's take one step backwards. Let's just go create a basic invoice. And then we'll send it to the customer, and let's start to break down which areas that we're going to be looking at customizing. So back to my invoices home. And I'm going to create a new invoice. Do the basic details. Type in a customer name here. Go ahead, pick a contact. And then you'll see all of our different options. But down here, just quickly take note. You'll see I've got a bunch of random fields. Contract details, delivery details, invoice photos, warranty. All of these are custom fields that I have included. But we're going to glaze over these for now. And we're just going to go down and kind of finish out the invoice. So let's just say that I'm going to install some IT hardware. So I'll put a couple items on here. Probably don't need to sell 5,000 of those. We'll sell 2. And then you'll see our tax codes. This is how we go ahead and select them. I've got line item taxes selected here. Okay, so let's just go ahead and let's email this invoice off. So every invoice and estimate, it's drafted up in an email. You get to personalize that message. So those email templates that we looked at a moment ago, those are available right here. So I can have each of my email templates. Inside of there's a short message. It tells them about this web link, says they can go online, pay here. Of course, you can customize that message. And then what we do is we include this link to the web page where they can view it automatically. And then we also have the attachment. So we'll go ahead and we'll open up both of these. So here's our PDF file, and here's the web page. Pretty basic, but you might notice I got a couple weird things in here, like this text looks a little out of place. That's definitely my fault. I've put in these as custom fields, just some text into my PDF template. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that. In this case, there might be some additional details that I want to track about this invoice, such as, for example, if I'm going to be doing shipping. We do have a different app that helps you manage like selling products. It's part of that, the orders flow. So normally like the integrated shipping flows, I can go an estimate to an order to an invoice, and then it handles everything for me. But there's also another option that you can take, which is to keep a simpler process and use fewer apps, and I can just track basic shipping details inside of the invoice itself. Now this is perfect for the company where shipping doesn't really matter. Maybe they have a third-party company who handles the shipment. They don't need functionality to print shipping labels. They just want to know what's the tracking ID in case I need it later, and when was it shipped. Those kind of information. So in that case, maybe it's more efficient for me just to include some custom fields onto the invoice. But then the question is, which of these custom fields do I want to expose to the customer? So let's start off. Let's create some spots for those shipping details. And actually, if you recall, we had actually had some shipping information in here already. Let's go ahead and let's see where those were created. So I had delivery details right here. Now you're going to be able to control all the fields that you enter as an admin through our feature called Custom Attributes. For that, we're going to hop into the Settings area, and we're going to find Custom Attributes here. Now within Custom Attributes, as you see, there's two options. So these are the two different locations that we can insert fields. The main one is right here, Invoices. These fields will appear once on the entire invoice. So the examples we looked at a moment ago, those were just general invoice custom attributes. We do have a secondary feature called Invoice Line Item Attributes. So this is something where, let's say, I'm selling products. I'm selling the same model number over and over and over. It has a standard price and all that. But I would like to record the specific serial number that is included with that one model. So I potentially might sell 5 products on one invoice, and I need 5 different serial numbers. Something along those lines. It's a piece of information that's not necessarily related to how you're going to bill for it. It's just related to the information that is going to be stored on this invoice. So for here, you see I've got my section of fields, and then I'll just demonstrate how to modify these. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and delete one of these details. And then maybe I go and I want to insert a date field. So I can insert that field, delivery date. I can just say this is the ship date. So what I can do is I can update that, and that will save this away. So now I have that field. It's going to be available as an administrator when I'm entering a new invoice into the system. So we can go ahead and we can take a look at that. Let's just go modify our existing invoice, and we'll check it out from there. So here, just hit the edit key. And inside of here, if we scroll down, we'll be able to see underneath delivery details, we have our new ship date field. So let's just go ahead and let's pick when it was shipped on the 26th, and let's say we've got some basic details. And we'll update that invoice. Now, quick little note, whenever you make changes to an invoice, the web page is updated instantly, and if you want to give them an updated copy of that PDF, then I can always just hit print PDF, or I can send it right away from here. So if I go ahead and I download this PDF, we should see the updated version. All right, so we're looking through here, and what we just included was ship date. There's a couple delivery details, but if we look through here, we don't see our delivery details at all. Those fields are just not visible. Same thing is if we go to this web page and we refresh it, we're not going to see any of those details. The PDF and the web page are always going to show the same information. Now, the reason for this is because we did not modify the PDF template. When you're working with these fields, basically you create the field first. And creating the field in custom attributes means it's only available to the administrators, to your team internally in the Apptivo tool. But if I additionally want to expose that field to the customer, so let's say that I would like to show them all of these delivery details, but maybe I don't want to show them these other items like warranty and production details. So in that case, what I'll do is I will choose where I want my custom fields to be displayed inside of my PDF template. So we hop into Settings. And in this case, we're going to modify PDF templates. You will see that you can manage multiple different templates or different types of deals or for different types of customers, whatever it might be. And if I modify one of these templates, I can scroll down, and then I can choose what's going to be displayed here. So I could change this back. This actually was default, called Notes to Customer. I could remove it completely if I don't want it. You'll see I have my line item attributes here, but I can also look under the left section. So I am able to just type in details, or I can drag in one of my custom fields. So here I've got my delivery details. I would like it to appear right there, and you'll see my section drops right in. So I can go ahead, I can update that, and as we talked about, the web page will update instantly. So now we should see our delivery details pop up, and that notes to customer field has disappeared. So there we go. We've now updated our PDF file. But let's talk about a couple of the other things that you might want to do. So in this case, my tracking ID, my delivery date, these are going to change every time. Like I have to input these details right onto the invoice in order for them to appear. But there's some other information, like sometimes you have a standard agreement that you want to display on the bottom of every invoice, like your payment terms. Or these kind of details, like, for example, being able to put in your specific name that you would like them to address checks to. If you want to customize information and just make it the same for every invoice that goes out or every invoice of the same template, we can use our other built-in attributes in that PDF editor. So we can actually hop back in here. We'll go edit our PDF again. And then you'll see under invoice standard attributes, we have quite a few things available that weren't already visible. So basically all of the default fields in the invoice are going to be available right here, but there's one very special one called free text. Free text allows you to type in whatever you want. So if I scroll down here and I've got my standard company agreement, that was a free text field. So this is the most common thing where people kind of have like some terms and agreements. So let's see. I'll go see if I can grab a paragraph of text for us. Yeah, that's not what I was hoping for. But yes, you basically see you can have a paragraph of text. You can type in whatever you want, and we can even do like bullet points. We can change font colors, everything we need to. And the idea is that I can make that display wherever I want, so it just shows up on the bottom of every invoice. And then that way, every time somebody's going to have this text all printed out there. You'll also see that you can modify the various field labels and such. So even if we have a default field like those totals areas, these aren't even the defaults that I've set up. So for example, this originally said tax, but in this example I changed it to just say VAT at 20% because some company wanted to make it really, really clear what the total VAT tax was. So in that case, back in the template, you're actually able to just click on anything and make a modification to it. So I can scroll down here, I can go ahead and I can change this right back to just tax. I can change total cost to grand total. Make all these little tweaks to kind of fit up with my terminology. And here's one cool thing you can do. So some people like to say bill or order or whatever they might do. Instead of saying estimate, they might want to say quotation. I can actually change the text right here. And that will actually update that. You can also upload your own logo. We can add images. And you can really type in just about any details that you might want to have in there. And I update, and everything will take real-time effect. Oops, that's my PDF file. Okay, so that's about it as far as your PDF customization goes. The last little thing I'm going to tell you about is the payment options right here. And I'm also going to show you about how to configure payment options. So right there you'll see I've got a few different connections. I've got one section for PayPal, and then I've got all these other ones that are just written in, like Bitcoin and stuff. So these are manual payment options. I can fully control the image and the text that's displayed here, and I can choose which ones are visible. And then we support a few integrated payment options, which are PayPal, Authorize.net, and Zipmark. For the integrated options, it's actually a built-in flow where I can click on this button. It's going to open up a window to PayPal, allow me to complete the payments online, and then that payment is instantly recorded right back into Apptivo. Everything's done for you. Or if they chose to issue a check to you, I would always come back into the system and record it manually. From right here, I can record a payment. But as far as what is visible to the customer, you're going to control that through the settings area. So here we have an option called Payment Methods. You'll see you've got all these different items here. For example, the Bitcoin one I created myself, so you are able to add your own values, upload whatever logo you want. So if you've got a direct wire transfer, or if you want some other money transfer service, whatever it might be, you can type it in here. And then if you take any of our built-in ones, such as PayPal, you can just hit Edit, and then you'll see that each one of these services will give you like an API key, some special details that you'll get from your PayPal account. And then it's just a matter of typing in your special access credentials, you save it, and our system automatically does everything else for you. So it's actually pretty simple setup process to get those gateways integrated. Okay, so that's really the last of the customization of the look and feel of the invoice. Let's hop right back to our agenda. Now we're going to get into a couple cool features. So we're going to spend a few minutes talking about reminders and credit notes, and then we'll dive into the last section, which is kind of advanced billing flows and how to handle that. So for reminders and credit notes, these are really just kind of two cool features not too many people know about. I just want to tell you a little bit about them. Reminders is especially important, specifically in the invoices, and a lot of people don't know about this, but it's really a great feature. What it allows you to do is really stay on top of your unpaid invoices and ensure that you get that payment, because obviously the revenue of your company is the lifeblood. So what we want to do is we want to set up certain rules. So when we already talked about like setting up the payment terms, so I can put somebody on a net 30 or a net 60, which determines when their invoice becomes past due. So at a very basic level, yeah, I can look through a list of all past due invoices at any time. I can see exactly how much they owe and how overdue that invoice is. But instead of forcing me to come and check this queue repeatedly, I can just set up the system to automatically handle all these reminders for me. You'll see in this section on the left, I have an area called Payment Reminders, but it says no reminders found. Let me go ahead and dive in and explain this feature, though. So we're going to hop into the settings area. Both apps have the same reminders feature. And what this allows you to do is set up a couple different reminder thresholds. So you'll see I've got two reminders configured in my system. It says when the invoice is 10 days past due, send a certain email template, which I call that my friendly reminder template. And in this case, it should automatically send that email. So just 10 days after overdue, our system will send an email directly from you to your customer and ask them nicely to pay that email template. Then I can have a second reminder. So if they still have not paid after 20 days, I will send a different email template. But in this case, because the email is a little bit less friendly, I want to put it through a manual review process. So in the left column where we were looking, that's called the reminder queue. So you have the option to either have it automatically delivered out without ever telling you, or I can have it set up to just fill up that reminder queue. So I know who I need to go and maybe manually contact, or from here I can just click a button and manually trigger that reminder off to the customer. The same exact thing applies to estimates. And the only difference is in an estimate, it talks about the expiration date rather than the payment date. So that way you say my estimate is good for 30 days, and you can set up a reminder where when it's 10 days before it's due, then I can have a friendly reminder go out and ask them if they had any questions about the estimate or if there's anything preventing them from moving forward. All right, so that's the reminder system. Let's go ahead and let's talk about the credit notes. Now, the credit notes, this is a way for you to give a company credit to your customers, and credits can be applied to a customer invoice. So the way this all starts off is, let's say you send them a product and maybe one product gets damaged in shipping, or they weren't 100% satisfied. For some reason, I want to award them a credit for next time. So what is normally going to happen is I'm going to create a credit from something. So let's say if I had sent them an invoice last month and one of the products was $20 and it was broken, then what I can do is I can credit based on that invoice. I can create a credit from scratch, just such as a prepayment, and that's all just going to be done through the Credit Notes app. So underneath the Financial Suite, I'm going to go and I'm going to find Credit Notes, which in my example, I don't even have it enabled. So we're going to hop into the App Store and turn that app on. All right, perfect. So now I've got my Credit Notes. I can hop in here, and let's go issue a credit. So you'll see when I create the credit note, it'll ask me what type it's for. These can be customized, so I could say like a prepayment, but in this case, let's say there was a product return or damaged product. So what I'll do is I'll type in a customer name, so let's say it was from Maxilon, and then I can pick, so if I had invoiced them before, I can actually select that, and I get to search my invoices. Looks like I have quite a few invoices for this customer. Maybe I should have just typed in a number. Yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. All right, so I'll go ahead and I'll pick this invoice. So it was for $9,000, and then I can choose how much of that invoice that I'm going to credit. So let's say in this case I'm going to credit $150. So here, actually, it would have defaulted. Oh, sorry, there we go. So it'll read that invoice, and it saw the one payment of $9,000. So what will happen is, we do have a facility to manage multiple payments against each invoice, so I can select specifically which payment I'm going to be crediting them for. So there we go. I've selected my payment, it's logged into the invoice, and all this information can be looked up later on. I'm going to create that credit. So now what happens is this credit's kind of sitting away. Yes, at a later date, if I wanted to say, is there any credits for Maxilon, I can go search in here, or I could go and filter by, let's say, all of my credits I've awarded for product returns. So I've got some basic management capabilities. But then the way I apply it is it's going to get applied the next time I invoice that customer. So what I can do is I can go back over to our Invoices app, and then we're going to, I'll just edit an invoice from an existing customer. It has to be from the Maxilon customer because that's who we just credited. So let's take this most recent invoice. We'll hit edit. Well, there's actually two ways that you can apply a credit note. It's not through this edit screen. So once the invoice is created, I would actually just record a payment with their credit note. But I can actually apply a credit before sending. So you'll see down here it says credits, available credit 0. But that's because I have not yet selected a customer. So if I go type in that Maxilon customer who has the credit, and then I punch in let's just say, let's put a random line item on here. Okay, so I get a $3,000 invoice, but you'll see available credit, $650. So it looks like they actually had some remaining credit from before. And then I can choose how much of that credit am I going to apply. So typically I'll apply the full amount that they have available, and you'll see it'll just deduct that from the total. And then I could email that off to the customer, and then the credit is used up at that point because it's already been awarded. The other method is, let's say they have an outstanding invoice and I want to apply the credit to this invoice. What I do is I just act like I'm recording a payment. So just as if they sent me a check, I can select credit note right here. You'll see they have $650 balance, and it was a $650 payment. I wouldn't necessarily want to mark it as paid, so that would just apply the credit to this invoice, and if we scroll down, we'll see that the amount paid is updated, and the total remaining is just here. Okay, so that's the credit note system. Quite useful in many cases. And we are ready for the last portion of our presentation. So we're just going to spend a few minutes and we're going to talk about our recurring invoice functionality. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit about down payments, really, is all we're going to look at. No other special payment terms. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer those. But down payments is an extremely common question, so we'll go through some options there. Recurring billing and recurring invoices. These are perfect for the situation where you maybe have a subscription type service where you're going to charge them on the 1st of every month. Sometimes you maybe have a retainer where somebody hires you for the next 3 months. They'll pay you a few $1,000s a month, something along those lines. Or sometimes you put somebody onto a payment plan. So I'm sending out a $2,000 invoice, but instead I'm going to break it down and I'm going to send out 4 different $500 invoices to you. Those are a couple of the common scenarios where you might want to do this. And in that case, what you'll first have to decide is it a recurring invoice or is it a recurring bill? In our system, I know they sound pretty similar. The difference is a recurring bill is a subscription payment, meaning upon accepting the first invoice, they're going to type in their details for PayPal or through Authorize.net, and then automatically on that interval, the amount is going to be deducted in the future. So in that case, our system's not sending them a new invoice every month. It's just the money is being pulled out by the payment gateway that you set up. And the way you do that is when you're just creating any invoice, as long as you have either PayPal or Authorize.net set up, and little side note for Authorize.net users, you do have to have their ARB service. It's an additional fee for them to support subscription payments. And as long as you have those properly configured, down here, you can just select whether it's going to be a recurring bill or not. So in this case, I can say weekly, biweekly, or a monthly bill. So I can say a monthly bill to be initiated on the 1st of next month, and maybe I'm going to run that bill for 1 full year. So in that case, I just send off the invoice like normal. They're going to receive it. It's going to look exactly like we saw before, but the only difference is when they complete that payment, it will just launch off that subscription payment for them periodically. And what you'll see is in the left column, I have an area to just track all of my active recurring billings, which actually I have nothing in this specific business, but it would just show a list of everything that's currently under subscription. Now, the other scenario is where you send a new request for payment. So your customer, they're just going to send you a check every month, or they're going to go online and pay with a credit card every month, but they're not going to just have it removed from their account. So in this case, there's actually a different option for it. When you hit Create Invoice, you select Recurring Invoice. And on here, what you'll do is you'll be able to say, obviously, how often does it repeat? So once again, we can do 1 month just fine. We can set it up for the same exact timeline, which is it runs for 1 year from July to July. But the difference here is because we're going to be sending this invoice to them over and over, I get to pick the email template that will be delivered to them. So I can say my computer services invoice. And then I just go fill in my invoice just like normal. So once again, it's exactly the same as your other invoices. And then what will happen is our system will just automatically send this right off to their inbox every single month, and they can pay it just like they normally would. Same thing, we have a special section here, so I can look at my active recurring invoices, but these work a little bit different. So when you do a recurring bill, it only shows here in the active area of recurring billing. Recurring invoices are slightly different, where what we have is kind of a parent recurring invoice. So that first one you create will pop up right here, but then it continually creates the actual invoices. So your typical invoices that are generated from that system will actually show up in your normal queues right here. So this could be related to a recurring invoice. But what you'll see is if I click on any one of these recurring invoices, I can see the various invoices that have been generated. So here it'll show, every time it creates an invoice, it'll show that invoice details right here. So that way I can see the history of like the 15 invoices that I've sent to them over the last 2 years, something along those lines. Okay, so that is the recurring invoice. Pretty simple, but quite useful, used in many situations. Let's talk about our last portion here, methods to track down payments. So for this, I do have a slide which talks about the 3 main recommendations that we have. So it's really common where you have to do a project 50% up front, 50% at the end, or I'm going to bill you phase by phase, whatever it might be. Now there's 3 ways that you can easily track down payments. And these are going to differ based on which applications you're using, how complex of a process that you need to have, everything like that. So let's just quickly talk about the 3. I'll do some quick demonstrations, and then you can make the best pick for your company. The first and best way to do down payments is using the project management system. So like we saw earlier in that flowchart, we can go from like estimate to a project and then get to an invoice. And the reason you might track a project is it's for a professional services company, but it allows you to define phases, milestones within the project, and we have different billing options. So although, yes, you can bill hourly from your project, I can also just define a static amount for each phase, and then when I invoice, it will just show that amount. So that way, if I have a 50% upfront and 50% at the end, my first milestone can be 50% of the value of the full estimate, and then my last milestone can be the other 50%. And then I can just invoice straight from there. It would put the proper amount on. So that's one method, and let me go ahead and let me show you that real quick. So that would be from project management. I'll just go create a project from scratch, but you could come from an opportunity and such as we talked about. So I create this new project. Yeah, go ahead, select an existing template, keep it nice and simple. And the key part is right here, I would do milestone billing. So what this does is it'll set up my project. I already have a project template in here and everything. So my milestones are pre-created. But you'll see I have 3 milestones in this project. They have a bunch of tasks in them. You can actually run a very basic system. So if you're thinking this looks a little bit overwhelming, I could actually create just 3 milestones with no tasks or anything like that. I can just create this as a very basic digital workspace. But for each one of these milestones, you'll see milestone-based fee. So if I wanted to charge $5,000 up front and $5,000 at the end, I can mark that as $5,000, then mark this as $5,000, and it's as simple as that. The invoicing from here actually just happens right off the project. So straight from a project, I can hit Generate Invoice, and then it would pull over the proper milestone value based on whatever's completed so far. So that's one option, milestone billing from projects. The second option is to invoice for the down payment amount, and then use the credit notes that we demonstrated a moment ago. So really what you do is you just invoice them for 50%. Maybe you take your original estimate, you chop it in half, and then we invoice them. And then we just immediately award a credit that we're going to apply later on. So we're basically going to send them an invoice for the full project amount, but then apply a credit right to it. So that way, what we'll do is, let's just say we end up with an estimate is where we started. So I've got my quotation. Let's see, bring up one that's freshly created. All right, so I'll edit this real fast. Well, actually, I don't have to edit yet. I can edit once we get to the actual invoice. Sorry, this is actually a flat estimate. I'd rather get a typical one. All right, free flow computing. Oh, that is a fixed estimate as well. I'm not doing very lucky. Where's some typical estimates? Let's grab one for Maxilon. That's probably a standard one. There we go. So here we go. I've got my estimate right here. It's got some values on it. This is the full value of it. I'm going to charge $3,000. I'm going to convert this to an invoice. And we need to get the down payment here. So what I'm going to do is I'm either just going to chop the value in half. So I could just cut this in half right here, do $1,250, $250. Or another option that some people do is they use the discount field. So some companies never award a discount. So what you do is you just take 50% off the bill. And then as we saw earlier in the PDF editor, I can actually change this discount field to say down payment or half amount for down payment. I can put into text that will make it very clear to my user. But the goal of what you want is you want to get this invoice value to 50%, the proper down payment amount. So you choose one of those ways. In this case, I'll do the discount. It's easiest. Then I can send that off, collect payment from the customer. So I'll just go ahead and I'll save this invoice, and then let's say the customer pays the invoice. So great, $1,500 invoice. I'm going to pay off my down payment. They sent you a check. Okay, so in this case, the invoice is completely finished. So you're going to have one specific invoice just for that down payment. Great. Now what we want to do is we want to credit them for later on. So that way we can just charge them the full invoice value again, but then we can properly indicate that it was coming from a previous payment. So just like before, go to credit notes, create credit note, and we can go find that invoice. Of course, I have no idea what that number was. Yeah, I'm going to grab a random invoice. Maybe we should go look at what it was. Okay, 1286. That was our invoice number. Okay, so create it for Maxilon 1286. Right, and I'm going to credit them for all 1,500. And what I'd probably end up doing is I'd put in something called down payment right here. So I can have a special credit type called down payment and save that away. And just to show you how easy that is to configure, okay, credit note types. And I could come back in and I can modify that credit note. Okay, so there we got a down payment. Looks like it's not going to let me change it. I'll go ahead, I'll leave that as is, but you see how you can do it. So now that I have the credit, what would happen is you just go execute your project, deliver your services, whatever you need to do, and then finally we get to the last step, which is I'm going to invoice them for the final value. So here I come through, I'm going to draft up that invoice. I could actually just convert from the estimate. I'm just going to retype some details in here. All right, so we have our $3,000 invoice, but we have $1,500 in credit. So we just apply that, and we email that off. So then that's another way. Now we have our two invoices out there. Both of them had the proper $1,500 value. The second one properly indicates the full original value, but that the fact that they had already paid $1,500 of it. So what we'll end up looking at is something like this. And then they could just finalize by paying with PayPal or credit card, whatever it might be. Okay, so then the third possible option, this one's just a little bit more, it's an even more basic option. So really this is the most complex option, also the most ideal, smoothest flow. This one's a little bit of a middle ground where there's a couple like extra steps that you have to go through, but it still does a pretty clean job. And this one's for the people who just want the most basic system. Maybe they don't do too many down payments. They're gonna do a couple on the fly, or they don't have many invoices. And in this case, what we do is we basically just use one single invoice and we continually alter the value so they represent the proper invoice amount. So in that case, it's kind of a simplified version of what we just did. Let's say we have an invoice that was sent out. Let me grab an existing one. Or actually, I'll draft up a fresh invoice. So we'll do it just like the last one. Single line item called consulting. Oops, I think it was 30. Okay, so we have our $3,000 value. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically put in a note. So I can just type that in, okay, and then in that case I'm going to charge them $1,500 for this. So maybe I just put in 15 hours or change the rate. So then I would email this off to them. They could pay it. So let's just say they went online and they paid with PayPal or whatever it is. I'll just type in some details. And then what you'll do is once your project's actually done, I just edit the invoice and I increase the value again. Go back up to 30, and then what we'll end up with is the total value now exceeds the amount paid once again, and there's $1,500 of balance remaining. So now the second time they come around and pay it, you're actually just going to mark the invoice off as fully paid, and you're all set there. So that's the third option. Definitely, I don't know if I'd call that the recommended one, but it's something for those of you who want to keep it simple, just keep it all in the Invoices app. I mean, that's going to be the least amount of effort. It's just put a couple notes in there to properly indicate what's going on, and then you just get to deal with a single invoice the whole time. Okay, so that's going to about wrap it up for today's presentation. Thanks everybody for attending. Hope you found it quite useful. If you'd like to see more upcoming webinars just like this, check out our homepage at apptivo.com. In the bottom right corner, you can register for future upcoming webinars. And then also, if you want to check out this video and future videos, you can check out our YouTube channel. Just head on over to youtube.com/Apptivo, and you'll get to see all of our uploaded videos here. Once again, thanks for attending, thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time.